So what we did last time is we have our little maze set up. And let's go ahead and adjust our camera. So I'm going to just, again, I'm moving this up like this. And I'm going to move it this way. I'm going to hit E and rotate it down. And I'm just trying to find an optimal area to just sort of display my game. And honestly, I think for me, so if you type in 90, or I'm sorry, let's go to our rotation here. Here we go. If we rotate it on 90 like this, let's make sure our X, we've removed the X, and let's go 90 on X. Something like this. We could do an overhead game like this, almost a 2D game. And so when our player, down here, we press play, let's go ahead and make sure our display, I'm sorry, it was from free aspect to maybe 16 by, let's do 9. And that locks it in and we're 100%. And so now when we look at this, we can sort of position our camera. So when I press play here, and I move my WASD or arrow keys around, you can see we have sort of an overhead thing. And our goal is to find the cube. There we go. Now notice that when I hit this cube, I don't go through it, right? It makes it hard for selection. So what we want to do is select our cube. It looks like we've got a bunch of cubes. So let's make sure we select this particular one. And let's rename it to pickup. Come on. All right, I had to sort of restart. So if you ever have it where you can't click in here and type or anything, you have to sort of restart. So I'm going to name this pickup. And so now we know this is our pickup. And then inside of our assets folder models, remember we had that environment material here, this ground. I'm just going to make another models folder and create it, call it objects. And then in here, I'm going to right click, create a new material, and then call this pickup. And then on this, I'm just going to make it a purple color, something like that. And then I don't think necessarily that this pickup will apply. Yeah, so let's go ahead and delete this pickup and then go with our my love, which is the Pro Builder stuff. So we're going to go with a, there we go, new shape. Let's drag it over here. Interesting it didn't update the camera that fast. Um, I actually have a lot of things rendering and all that other good stuff going on my computer, so I got a little bit of a delay. Now let's go ahead and build this. And then, remember I dragged my pickup here. I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-3, and that made it purple, which is cool. And in order to make this thing a pickup, what we have to do is um, we have to make this collider. Um, and actually, what I want to do is let's remove this mesh collider and let's add a box collider. So I type in box, and I did that by hitting add component. And you'll notice there's something here called is trigger. So if I hit is trigger, what you'll notice is when I press play and I roll over there, I can go through it. And the whole goal behind this is um, triggers are things you want to walk through, and then it triggers some sort of event in your game, an explosion. Like if you've ever played a game where you're like sneaking through an environment and it's like a zombie game, and you get to a certain area and you walk through, and then all of a sudden the wall collapses and a giant monster comes out. There's some sort of invisible trigger, or even visible sometimes, and it's triggering those sets of animations and explosions and such. All right, so there's our cube. Now let's go ahead and write up some code in our player controller so that we can find that cube. So something that's pretty nifty inside of Unity, I'm going to zoom out a little bit here so we could see this, is the ability to tag objects and give them a name and then find that name. So I'm going to shrink these down. I don't really need to jump into these anymore, just to kind of give myself a little bit of space. And we're really working with more of the default functions or methods that are built into Unity. And another one we're going to use is the onTriggerEnd. Now remember, we checked that on to make it a trigger. So we can go ahead and type in void on, and you'll notice because of IntelliSense, it already found this one. So if I press enter, it should auto-populate it. So private void on trigger enter, this method will register anything that we walk into. So let's see if we do print other, I believe we could do dot name. I think that'll work. And that should print it to the console. So let's see if it, um, huh, let me rename this to pickup. Come on, don't do that to me. There we go. So let's see if we wrote print other.name and we enter a trigger. Now other is a variable just like the others, and what it does is it stores whatever we run into or collide with. And if I write other.name here, let's see what happens. If I press play, and let's go ahead and do our window, and then let's do console. And you'll notice it keeps running. We don't want that hello. So actually, let's go ahead and get rid of that. It's gonna sort of mess up my demo a little bit here. Here's fixed update. I'm gonna go ahead and just click on 25 and then press delete to get rid of that whole line. You can also highlight it if you feel more comfortable and press delete. That's just kind of a pro tip, clicking that number first. So let's go down in here and I'm gonna press play. There we go. And now here's my ball. It's moving around and we're colliding. And let's see. Oh, look at that. I ran through this trigger once, twice, and it's giving me the name, pick up. All right, cool. So that's working. Now, there's much better methods of debugging than just doing it this way, but this is called print debugging, which I have good friends who, again, terrible spellers, the most amazing programmers, and they use this other method of debugging through the code. But print debugging is a pretty good method when you're first starting out, okay? So we know that works. Let's go ahead and get rid of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to say is this, now this is new. This is called a branch, right? There's three parts to any programming language. There's sequences where you're reading it like a word, like a paper for school. And then there's branching, which are if statements. And then there's looping. We haven't gotten to looping, and I'm not going to confuse you with that now. But what I'm going to say is if, and it looks like a method, right? We have the word if, and this is made, again, this is a precursor thing in C#. So if open close parentheses, open curly brace, close curly brace. If something happens, whatever happens inside of these curly braces is going to happen. So if other, just like we did other.name, other, and then that object is called a game object. So if our other object is a game object and it happens to have a tag with the name pickup. Now, mind you, I'm going to double click this and copy this. I think I want compare tag actually. Compare tag. So we're going to check if this tag, so compare tag, is pickup. So let's go back into our Unity scene. With our pickup selected, I'm going to go to tag here and I'm going to hit add tag. And our list is empty. So we're going to make a new tag and I'm going to paste in that pickup and I'm going to hit save. Now don't forget this step. If I click on pickup, I want to make sure that I click on this and there's our new pickup tag. So what it's going to check is if our tag is pickup. So if I go in here, if our other object that came in the compare pickup, let's test this and we'll do print. We have our pickup. Let's save that. So let's press play and I'm going to clear my log here. And in my game here, let's press play. We have our pickup. Now we don't actually have our pickup. We haven't done anything, played a particle or whatever, but it shows that our tag works. Our pickup tag works inside of here. We have our pickup. So something else we can do is we can actually turn off the other object or destroy it. So let's go ahead and set it to inactive. So notice that this pickup has a checkbox here, and that's called set active. Okay? So what we'll do is we'll print we have our pickup, and let's just do the same code as before, other. Now check, mind you, we're checking if we run into something with a pickup here, other dot game object dot set active, and then inside of this, and remember to always check your spelling type false. And really check your spelling between each thing. And pause the video, if you get errors, you're gonna see it in your console here. So for example, if I misspell this and I put fall, and I save this, and I press play, you'll notice it stops me, and this terrible, it starts vomiting errors, and it'll tell me, it'll say, um, the name fall does not exist in the current context. That means this thing really only takes a true or a false value, this set active. True being it's on, false being off. So let's test this. I'm going to jump back in here. I'm going to press play. My error cleared up, which is beautiful. All right, let's go ahead and set this to inactive. And there it is, false. And it's inactive, but it's actually still there. We just made it visible. Now, the last thing we want to do is give them a win scenario. And then that'll be the end of this demo. And that's by giving us some sort of UI, right? So I'm going to right click in here. I'm going to go to UI, and I'm going to do text. Now, this text is super tiny, so I'm going to make that really big. Let's do maybe not font size. Let's see. Now, what's interesting about Unity is your text is actually in this separate view all the way out here in the universe. But you'll see it update here. So this can be a little confusing. So just kind of scroll out until you find this big box here. And then I'm going to expand this box out pretty big. And then I can increase my font size over here. And what I wanted to do is, maybe the white will be a little bit easier to read on this. And let's move this up a little bit. So on our Y position, position Y, we could also hit W and just kind of shift this up. I want it right there. And I want this text to say U1 exclamation point. All right, so let's save this. And what I'm going to do, actually, you know what might be more fun? I'm going to put no text in there, but I'm going to make a reference to this text with a public object, right? That we can drag this in. So we have a canvas with a text object with nothing in it. So let's go back to our script, and we're going to create one more variable. And this is going to be interesting because this is a variable we're creating ourselves. So we're going to do void u1 text. Now you can name this hamburgers, your name, whatever you want, but what this does is it actually, again, this is just something that I want to make it the same name as what I think it's going to do. So it's going to, let's say, print u1 text. Now, there's two parts to any method or function. You create it, and then you call it. So inside of here, I'm going to call my u1 print u1 text function. Okay. Now the way you do that is you simply write the name, open close parentheses, semicolon. So after it deactivates my cube, it's going to call this. This is a sequence, and then inside of here we're going to print u1. Now this isn't printing to the screen yet. It's just printing to our console. That's all this does. So let's test this out. So I'm going to clear this as well. So let's press play. Let's clear this. And we get U1. All right, so now we want this to appear on the screen when they're playing a game and not necessarily just in our console. I know this video is getting a little long, but we're pretty much done. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a public variable here, public text variable called win text. And let's make this W lowercase. That's how I like to make my variables. I'm going to save that. And there's also one other thing I forgot. In order to use the text data type, so notice that it kind of did this weird thing here. It didn't let me put in text. And if I get rid of this, it's going to give me an error. But this is what we want. So it doesn't know what the heck I'm doing here. See, it says this error. And if I highlight over, it says, are you missing a using directive? Do you see that? This type of namespace text could not be found. Are you missing a using directive? And I certainly am. So I'm going to click in front of this U and hit Control D to duplicate it. Or you can type it out. And I'm going to put dot UI. Now, what these are, I'll get a little bit now that we're a little bit becoming a little bit more programming savvy. These are libraries of code. And there is a library of code that's already written for us called UI, and we want to take advantage of that. And now that we've included it, you'll notice, look, our text value now appears. So here's when text. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And inside of here, I'm going to select my sphere, which we really should name. I'm going to hit F to focus. I'm going to name this player. No more of this sphere nonsense. We're real game developers now. I'm going to change it from player, right? I'm going to change it from sphere to player. And then on this, you'll notice, what is this? I have a when text here. I can actually grab the text and drop it in here. So now I have access to that. So this variable inside of here, this when text variable, what I can do is I can say, I'm going to double click this to make sure I've got the same spelling. Let's zoom out a little bit. Or actually, let's collapse these. We're not going back in those. And we are pretty much done with our trigger here. So I'm going to collapse that too. So let's zoom in down here. I'm just going to say when text, and then I want to access the text box. I'm going to hit dot text, and then whatever I want equals quotes semicolon U1 exclamation point. And let's kind of specify this one more time. Here's our text box. This is when I do when text.text, what am I getting? I'm looking for this box with the same name. And its font size is 132. And watch what happens when I press play and I go in here. It'll populate this box, hopefully in real time, with U1. And you see it popped it into here too. So that's the end of these videos, and we'll be expanding and building more advanced games as we go on throughout the class.